Ullakut, Tungasugitilu Nasi. Good morning and bonjour. Ale asutseatunga, hovia asutseatunga takanigiami, uhausum pinaswaktasi, tusakatasugit, pimmario hatamata. I am very happy to join you here this morning, and we are on the unceded territory, traditional territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. Indigenous leaders, parliamentarians, Commissioner Ignace, dignitaries and delegates from across Canada and around the world. Le Canada avance sur le chemin de la réconciliation. Ullak inutitutuina langina mahawi manyakosi inuhatika inutitutuina galuagoma isuaksanek sawgaluaksunga kisiani hallunati tukusiguna tuinawata hallunati tongni sawlangayunga. I just explained that if I had my preference, I would probably do my speech in Inuktitut, but because as Indigenous people, we have many different Indigenous languages, that the common language that we often speak is English and sometimes French. So I'm going to be giving my speech primarily in English so that everyone understands my message. So we are making space for those who still carry the pain of one of the darkest chapters of our history, the residential school system. As we know, this system caused deep harm to Indigenous families. Children were taken from their homes. They were placed in institutions far from their families. There, they were forbidden to speak their language or practice their culture. And many suffered unspeakable abuse and neglect. Ces traumatismes se transmettent de génération en génération. Reconciliation is not easy. It means having hard conversations and listening to truth that should never have been. It also demands action to dismantle the barriers that have historically divided us. Supporting Indigenous languages through education is one such action. It is one essential way we build trust and move forward. La Décennie internationale des langues autochtones de l'UNESCO est bien entamée. Although the international community acknowledges the vital role of Indigenous languages in building stronger societies, the fight is far from being over. Here in Canada, more than 70 Indigenous languages are spoken. Among them is my language, Inuktitut, and Cree are widely used today, yet many others are at risk, including our languages as well. Inuktitut has been diminishing, and we can see that in our communities. In 2006, 21% of Indigenous people across Canada reported speaking their traditional language. By 2021, that number had dropped to just 13%. Il est urgent protéger les langues autochtones. As a child, I was fortunate to grow up in a home where 2 languages were spoken. At home, our family conversations were always in Inuktitut. My mother and grandmother were unilingual, Inuit speaking. My father, who was white, fluent in both Inuktitut and English, introduced us to English as well, although we never really spoke it until we got into school. Those two cultures, equally cherished, and the harmony between two worldviews shaped so much of who I am today. Inuit winnaw suta nuna hakasi mayu asingit do isu magitsugit ukhaw sibut ikhaw magutigattigu ilokhositinik ammalo innait inutukhait ukhaw sagisuunginnik ikhawmititawsuun watta ilinniatitawtsuta ammalo ilagit anaqqamini ukhahatigitsia hattasuungummata iyoksaari yugattalu inutsuta ijunginna suungu yugo hangatuinna katittuaqatta tamannaquvianaqtu alianaqtu. Because we don't have Inuktitut translation, I'll just translate whenever I speak Inuktitut. So I just want to say that in Inuktitut, like other indigenous languages, our languages carries our memories, our family stories, our imagination, and our humor too. We often laugh when we meet each other about silly things or important things, but laughter is considered to be one of the best medicines for us all, I think. Encore aujourd'hui, les mots Inuktitut me ramènent à des images, des odeurs et de lieux qui ont forgé mon identité. However, at the Federal Day School, my siblings and our friends, and some of them are here today, had to continue our education in English only. Speaking our mother tongue was forbidden, both in the classroom and on school grounds, even though we were in our own community of Fort Chimo, now known as Kuujjuaq. We lost the chance to build an academic foundation on the rich cultural knowledge we had received at home. We lost the opportunity to keep developing our abstract thinking in our mother tongue. Imagine a future where we could succeed professionally without giving up our Indigenous identity felt out of reach. It warms my heart to see more and more initiatives across Canada making space for Indigenous children to learn and speak their ancestral languages in school. C'est l'un de mes souhaits les plus chers. Of course, like many other countries, there are real challenges to transforming Indigenous language instruction here in Canada. A little over a decade ago, I worked with people across the North on a national strategy on Inuit education. There we made 10 recommendations. One of the most fundamental was this: invest in teachers. How do we draw more Inuktitut speaking into the teaching profession? How can we harness the potential of fluent community members, including elders who haven't attended university? These individuals are educators in their own right and should be recognized and supported, as they too are our teachers. What support can we offer to help them thrive in the classroom to become even more effective in their teaching roles? We must also acknowledge the historical inequities between Indigenous and non-Indigenous teachers and commit to eliminating them. We cannot afford to lose any more Indigenous educators because of such disparities. Another recommendation was for improving Inuktitut instruction was to expand and develop curriculum that was centered on Inuit priorities. This can also apply to other Indigenous languages. The material must be relevant, it must spark curiosity, and it must carry a sense of pride. We also recommend stronger coordination among territories, provinces, and school boards. Complex decisions about Inuktitut instruction must be made more collectively to foster consistency and unity across the regions. For example, can we agree on a common Inuit writing system? That is a big question that is before us. And how do we ensure the language continues to grow, adopting new words for new technologies, while also preserving the old ones, like the words I used to hear from my grandmother? But most importantly, we recommended reaching out to parents, elders, and other community members to bring them into our education system. Apprendre une langue commence à la maison, dans la communauté. But how do we motivate a community to support that learning when many feel disconnected from the language themselves? When some associate it with the past or with painful memories, and when others still struggle to trust the very institutions that once broke their connection to the language. And yet, this is key. Parents, elders, and the wider community can make a powerful difference by encouraging children to embrace their language through speaking it with family and friends and through education. And I say this because of my own personal experience. Because I was brought up in a family speaking Inuktitut, my Indigenous language continues to be very strong. And I'd like to see more of that happening in our communities. Khitonga tinnik ammalo innait ilaw tilluit nunakhativullu katutsi khatigi ni sawya khagut inuktiturnimik atutsiakhuluit khitongavut tema sapumisia hattaqutta khitonga tinnik aneqqatinnilunniit ilinniavimilunniit ukhalimahattaluti inuttitut taatsuminga ukhausituqattinik ilippalianeqsauniartut teemeertaneerutta Il y a des défis, mais nous faisons aussi des progrès. Over the past 4 years, I've witnessed many grassroots Indigenous language education initiatives across Canada. I've seen a strong desire to teach our own languages, but I've also come to recognize just how great the needs are and how much more support is required to revitalize Indigenous languages in every part of this country. Today, I want to shine a light on a few success stories where that kind of support has truly made a difference. When I visited British Columbia, I spoke with students from the award-winning Indigenous Language Revitalization Program. This program equips learners with practical strategies to help preserve endangered languages in their communities. In Regina, Saskatchewan, I visited the First Nations University of Canada. There, students can pursue programs in arts, education, and language instruction in several of their local Indigenous languages. And I am proud to say that work is underway to develop and create an Inuit Nunangat University. I commend ITK Inuit Tapiri Kanatami for their commitment to this. It will be Canada's first university rooted in Inuit culture and language and established in the North. These are really huge steps forward. We have done a lot. We have to look back sometimes to see how much we have done. And this conference is an illustration of how far we've gone. Today, I feel a strong sense of hope when I see young Indigenous people forging their future careers while proudly embracing their identity. And you can see that more and more. When I was a young adult, we were still pretty much under the influence of colonization and sometimes afraid to show who we were. But now, that is not the case. Chers délégués, merci de participer à cette conversation. Nakokmik ilun nasi tamatsuminga pinasuaktusi ammalu upperusunnehaktusi nunaktuali maami pisimayutakkanimata hitongavut ammalu inimmarikukpaleayut inuttiturnimik ammalu asingit nunakhaasimayuit ukhausurminik aturunnasitsiariahakmata. Thank you for working to make people around the globe aware that kids learning their own Indigenous languages in school and at home is one of the most powerful investments that our communities and our governments will ever make. I'm going to leave you with a word, an Inuktitut word that I often heard my grandmother and other elders use. Ayuinnata. Can you say it? Ayuinnata. Ayuinnata veut dire persévérer malgré les difficultés. It means never give up, just as my people have done for generations, surviving for millennia. So let's keep going so that Indigenous languages continue to thrive, continue to heal, and continue to enrich all of humanity. Kayo sitsianak hugo ilunata, tamakwa ukausibut, nunahakasi mayuit ukausingit, kayo sitsiakuluit, pirok paliat siakuluit, ammalu mamisakotiulutik, ammalu inusitinik, pivalikutahang niagata, nunaktuali maa isimagilugu. Nakukmik, Hoyanamik, thank you, merci.